up to know love and peace.
Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. It is 7 o'clock on a Monday morning, and because it is Monday, we are joined by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in the form of Inspector Michelle Lewis. Miss Lewis, good morning.
Good morning to you, and good morning to you.
Morning, Inspector. How are you doing this morning?
Good. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you as well. Now, school has reopened, and so we are keeping the focus on children, but more so youth and gang activity. I know that there was a G.R.A.C.E project that was launched recently. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we remain committed to reducing crime and the fear of crime. And some of the measures that we implement are either reactive or proactive. Last week we launched the G.R.A.C.E project, which is one of our proactive approaches in relation to crime reduction and the fear of crime and all of that. And the G.R.A.C.E project really means gang reduction and empowerment, a community empowerment project with the United States of America and the Trinidad and Tobago government through the TTPS. So it is aimed at reaching young persons to assist where we see, for example, a high rate of crime being done or committed by young people. That project is intended to reduce that figure.
How?
So for example, when we look at the data, for example, for the year we have about 450 firearms that have been seized, and out of that 64 were high power rifles. We had just over about 1,060 persons charged with gang-related activities or firearm-related offenses. And when we look at that, 70% of that figure are from persons between 16 years and 35 years old. Mm-hmm. So that shows that's the youth age category internationally. Mm-hmm. So we see that in Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of the crimes and gang-related activities and criminal offenses that are taking place are being committed by young persons. So when we look at, for example, we have the new piece of legislation, Act 4 of 2021, which is the Anti-Gang Legislation Act. And we look at the definition of what is a gang. So a gang is a combination of two or more persons, either formal or informal, conducting themselves or performing gang-related activities. And so the next question will be, well, what is a gang-related activity? So gang-related activities would include recruitment of persons, cohesion or encouraging persons to join a gang, which can be formal or informal. Mm-hmm. Lastly, motor vehicle hijacking, trafficking offenses, firearm offenses, and that kind of thing. So what we see happening is that you would find young persons gravitate to what appears to be popular, which in a lot of cases are bad. And so it may appear that having connections and friends who are involved in criminal activities to befriend them and who can coerce and encourage them to get involved in activities that are gang related. Like, for example, harboring a gang member or gang leader and stuff like that. So when you look at what has been happening and trend within Trinidad and Tobago, the G.R.A.C.E project is intended to mitigate some of that. So it is intended that we reduce some of the trends that we are seeing with young persons, so that we get a reduction in crime, and we get more young persons being better products of the country.
But how will we? I'm still not sure how is the project actually going to do it? Because I understand what you're trying to do,
right?
But what are the steps that are going to be taken to ensure that we reduce some of that?
Right. So the G.R.A.C.E project is actually a social intervention project, so that it will be targeting, okay, so therefore we are going into 12 station districts within Trinidad and Tobago, within the 10 divisions that we have. We are currently in the process of training 600 officers. So it's a new project. And the intent with it is to go into the communities, having done some research and data which are currently being done, mm-hmm. and some of it has already been done, to see what are the weaknesses that lure young persons into that area. So for example, if it is employment, if it is self-esteem and some other issues and challenges that they're going through, or violence, because when persons are involved in violent activities, they tend to have depression, anxiety and stuff like that. So it's to get to the root cause of the problem that would cause them to go into that direction and to treat with it.
Because so I was also wondering as well, how is this different from, let's say, the police youth clubs that are in the communities?
So it supports it.
Okay.
but on another platform because it looks specifically to gang and gang-related activities, whereas Police Youth Club covers a broad spectrum and everything. So this is targeting what we are seeing as a trend developing in the country with gang-related activities and young persons' involvement in it.
Now, you would have mentioned the legislation. I know it was a new legislation, I think, last year. If somebody is charged with being in a gang, what are some of the offenses that they can face?
Right, so for a person, so like indicated, 2 or more persons, right? So we have just about 120 gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. Which is a lot. That we know of.
Right.
And as indicated, it could be 2 or more persons, right? It's the mind and well, what we call the actors' way and the men's way, the mentality, the thought behind it, and the activity to commit, to do the act, right? The actors' way. Right, good. And so with that now, we have over 120 gangs in Trinidad and Tobago, either formal or informal. And through the project that we have, the G.R.A.C.E project, we are able to reduce the trends that we are seeing. But you asked me something, I just, because you
what's the penalty? The penalty to the offenses.
Thanks for that. So the offense is 25 years on conviction, on indictment.
Remind me, what is an indictable offense again?
So a person who is a gang leader, gang member, and who is found having gone through the court, commit an offense and is convicted on indictment to a fine of 20 to imprisonment for 25 years. So in this case, there is no substitute financial, as in
no bail.
Fine or fine.
No fine,
no
right.
fines,
Right, so
it's just jail time.
It's just jail time, and this matter is an indictable matter, means that it goes before a judge and jury in the High Court as opposed to the summary court before a magistrate. So it's a serious offense. Similarly, for persons who encourage persons to become gang members, same 25 years, indictable.
All right, so can I just ask in the middle here, you said that there are 120 gangs, so this means that the TTPS is aware of these 120 gangs. How come they're still on the street?
So if it is that, okay, so we have the gang, anti-gang, there's a unit, right? And so they would collect data and they would be doing intelligence gathering and that kind of thing. And some of the offenses where persons are charged are not necessarily under a particular, the offense might be under firearm and firearm related offenses or under the Firearm Act, also under the Motor, the Larceny Act or some other thing. So you may think that the person is not, or the police are not treating with it when persons are charged. Because remember, some of the gangs are either formal or informal. And so we do not divulge the names of the gangs. When we speak of the gang, we just say the amount of gangs. But within that figure, I did not indicate if 160 persons were gang related or were gang members. You are presuming that the figure that I call here persons are not gang members who have been charged.
You said 120 gangs exist.
Right, and I am saying that we had over 1,000 persons charged.
Right, but then the gangs wouldn't exist anymore. If it is you arrest everybody and put them in jail, where the gangs?
No, remember.
The gangs will not
when
be in
you're
the
charged,
prison?
you're not arrested, there's a difference between that.
When you are arrested and charged, you are out on
bail. So it's a bailable offense?
Indeed. So
well,
I think even the offense of murder right now has been...
It's bailable, yes.
So that we would charge, and that is something you would hear police cry a lot about, that we will go there, do the job, work hard, put the person before the court for firearm offenses, they get another firearm, we pick them up again, we arrest them, of course through the correct procedure, and then they back out on bail. So we cannot do anything about that, but it doesn't mean that they are gang not related, they are not a part of gangs.
Which is why there's so much
part of the problem is the system that needs to be adjusted.
Which is why there's so much talk about the bail amendment bill. I'm hoping now that Parliament, because we have the ceremonial opening today. So I'm hoping that is actually on the legislative agenda now that Parliament has reopened. But I wanted to know, using the G.R.A.C.E program, how can we pinpoint exactly the children who are in these gangs? Because the 120 you mentioned, is that a mix of the older ones who would have recruited the younger ones into the gangs? And so if we have this 120, how can we identify them and sort of pull them out of the system? Is it as simple as that?
So we have what we do, so we have officers who are part of particular sections and stuff like that, who do surveillance, intelligence gathering and that kind of thing. And certain areas have been identified. We have identified in the interim, in the first stage, 12 station districts that we are going to start the project in from the intel that we have gathered. It is not in the best interest of the child to identify a particular child or say that this child may go wrong because it would stereotype.
Of course.
So what we try to do is be a bit broad to be able to conceal and to cover, but go in and do what we have to do.
But for the ones who are in the gangs, is there any way for the police to get involved to kind of remove them then? Does the police have that sort of power to actually go and, you know, sort of pull them out from these gangs?
Is it power or is it influence?
Well, like, anyone.
It's right, so, okay, so when you look at what causes a child or a young person to get involved in gang activity, the intent is to mitigate that with something else of interest to them that would give them what they think they're getting in the gang. So where, for example, the Police Street Club and this G.R.A.C.E project that is to start, gives them that level of empowerment, self-esteem, growth and that kind of thing, and they see in a vision and a future, then it will cause them to move from there and go in this way. Now we understand that being members of a gang and when you're involved in gang activities, coming out of it could be a difficult thing because you would have already initiated in some types of activities.
You made a commitment of sorts.
You would have
Yeah, no, I mean, that's
gotten yourself in some activities that, you know.
So you made your commitment to them, be it good or bad. It's still a commitment you made to them, and as such, it'll be difficult for you to just
It is difficult, but it's not impossible.
Of course.
Which is what I was
Right, it is not impossible, and so we are here to support.
Of course.
Somebody, the factors seem to be like, I mean, you know, self-esteem and that kind of thing is obvious parts of it. One part of it that I don't think we consider is sometimes it's easy money. Right? So there's lots of, I mean, it might be actual like wealth, but to a young person who doesn't have a job or doesn't have any income coming in, they see it as I can do minimum and get money as compared to working for a whole month to get a measly salary at the end of the month. How do we mitigate that aspect of it? You know,
I am seeing a lot of young persons going into becoming self-employed, and I think that's a good avenue. Whether it's in the agri industry, the hydroponic industry, or whatever, I mean, if you can show them the real aspect of it in terms of the money that you get out of it, because
I want to challenge that no, Inspector. Here's why I'm challenging it, right? Because for anybody who's starting a business, anybody who's going into entrepreneurship, you need capital. You need money to start. So if you don't have the capital investment to begin with, how are we going to be able to say we're going on? You can do this, but you have no money to start with, right? What has been happening, unfortunately, the music and cultural side of things, we've seen where it is alleged, and I have to say that just for the sake of not getting locked up, right? It is alleged that gang leaders were part of the initial investors into artists recording music, right? And now we have a whole movement of artists that are gang affiliated or allegedly gang affiliated, as the case may be. And it all started because of capital investment from the same gang leaders. So we have these people willing to put the money into this thing and boost what they are doing. So the music is coming out directly, motivates some of these young people to go out and they're bad. They're bad out here and they want to be bad because the music is fulfilling that desire in them, right? So how do we mitigate against something like that without having proper capital investment?
Right, so it will always appear as if the help on that side is better. Now, if I'm selling something to you, I would not tell you what would be the other side of the coin, right? So I would tell you, yeah, come into it and it looks nice and all kind of thing. But really and truly, when you're getting involved in some gang, there's a payback at some point in time, right? And that is something that young people do not see. And we have to be real with them and let them know that if you associate and if you do this, this could be the end. This, you know, you have to pay back. You have to pay back. And so once they get the knowledge and the understanding that it is not as easy as it looks, they will also be able to help them to make a better choice. Now, I have been watching a lot of the programs, youth activities and that kind of thing, and I am seeing where in different spheres, funding and support is being offered to young persons to get themselves involved in things that are good. And so, and training, whether it's a skill or some kind of thing to help you to become, you know, the person that you really could be without having to use that as an option. So the avenues are there. What we need really is for persons around you to encourage them to do so. parents, neighbors, the community to encourage young persons to do so because they need that kind of support. And that will help.
I know you want to go with Inspector again.
I think that's an important part of the message.
Of course.
Is the support system is what's key. And I think that's what I was trying to get to, is because people see it as easy money. You see these easy things that are easy to get to. And they don't realize, A, there is a payback. But also, B, your support system is very important. So your parents, your neighbors, your people directly.
Your girlfriend.
Oh God.
And that is how we are going to take this break now, Inspector Lewis. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Always a pleasure to be here. So encourage young persons, get yourself in good activities. G.R.A.C.E project is coming to your community. Become a part of it. The TTPS is working for you. If you see something, say something. We are here to help.
Thank you, Inspector Lewis. And that is how we are going to close this segment on the Now Morning Show. We have so much more coming up. Stick with us.
Especially in tongue, no one couldn't walk alone. Tongue was like a battle zone, but nowadays and so I and all chuck to